Every motel has a story. Some of them guests never check out of. Tonight, 8 true motel horror stories. The kind that make you check the lock twice, keep the lights on, and never look too long at the window. These are the rooms nobody talks about. The ones with a number missing from the hallway. The ones the front desk clerk won't rent unless you ask twice. Get comfortable, stay close, and remember, the door was locked the whole time. This is Mr. Dead Silence. Story 1. Room 114. The sign outside the Rustwood Motor Inn had been flickering for 3 years, and nobody in Alcona County, Michigan had bothered to fix it. Half the letters were dead. What remained read RUTOD, like the building itself had given up trying to say its name. Danielle Voss didn't care about the sign. She cared about the fact that it was 11:30 at night. She'd been driving since Detroit, and her GPS had died somewhere around Standish with the rest of her phone battery. One night, she told the man behind the desk, maybe 2. He didn't look up from his newspaper, just slid a key across the counter, an actual brass key, heavy, attached to a plastic tag that said 114 in faded marker. End of the hall, he said. Ice machine's broken. Don't mind the noise from next door. What noise? He finally looked up. His eyes were pale, tired, the kind of tired that came from more than one bad night's sleep. You'll know it when you hear it. Danielle laughed it off. Small-town motel owners loved their theatrics. She grabbed her bag, walked the outdoor corridor past a row of dark windows, and let herself into 114. The room smelled like carpet cleaner over something older. Water stain shaped like a hand on the ceiling. A television bolted to the dresser, tuned permanently to static. She didn't touch it. She showered, checked the deadbolt twice, and climbed into a bed that dipped in the middle like 100 bodies had slept there before her. At 1:47 a.m., she woke up to the sound of a woman crying. It was coming from the wall behind the headboard. Thin, muffled, rhythmic, not screaming, just crying, the kind that had been going on for a long time and had settled into a routine. Danielle sat up, pressed her palm flat against the wallpaper. The crying stopped. She told herself it was the TV in the next room, a movie. Something with earbuds turned up too loud, bleeding through drywall built in 1974. She almost believed it. She lay back down, and 30 seconds later, the crying started again, closer this time, like it had moved from the wall to the foot of her bed. Danielle didn't sleep again that night. She sat with the lamp on and her phone dead in her lap, watching the door, listening to nothing, because the crying had stopped the second she'd turned the light on. In the morning, she found the manager restocking a vending machine. "Who's in 113? She asked. He didn't stop stocking. "Nobody's in 113. I heard someone crying all night." Now he stopped. Looked at her the way you look at someone who said a word you didn't expect. 113's been empty since 2009, he said. "We don't rent it." Then who was I hearing? He didn't answer. He put the last soda in the machine, closed the glass door, and walked back toward the office without another word. Danielle should have left then. She tells people that now, when she tells this story at all, she should have packed her bag and driven the rest of the way on fumes and adrenaline. Instead, she got curious. She found the door to 113 around back, hidden behind an ice machine that had clearly been broken longer than the desk clerk let on. The doorknob was cold in a way that had nothing to do with the Michigan morning. Someone had painted over the keyhole, not covered it, painted directly into it, layers of it, like whoever did it wanted to make sure nothing could ever go in or come out. She pressed her ear to the door. Silence. Then, so quiet she almost convinced herself she imagined it. A woman's voice, right against the other side of the wood, whispering something Danielle couldn't make out. 2 words, maybe 3, repeated. Patient. Danielle stepped back so fast, she knocked over a trash can. She didn't check out. She ran to her car in yesterday's clothes and didn't look back at the building until she was on the highway, and even then, only in the mirror. For a full year, she didn't think about the Rustwood Motor Inn. Then, scrolling late one night, she found a local news archive, a cold case page maintained by a volunteer group out of Oscoda. A woman named Carol Ann Fenner, 26 years old, had checked into the Rustwood Motor Inn in October 2009, room 113. She never checked out. Her car was found in the lot 3 days later, keys still in the ignition, door unlocked, purse on the passenger seat. No body was ever found. No suspect was ever named. The case had gone cold in 11 months and stayed there. Danielle read the article twice. Then she read the comments. One, posted 4 months earlier by a user with no profile picture, read, "I stayed there in 2019, room 114. I heard her too." Danielle closed the laptop and didn't open it again that night. She called the motel 2 weeks later. She doesn't fully know why, only that she needed to hear the man's voice again, needed to ask him something she hadn't thought to ask the first time. A recording picked up, number disconnected. She searched the Rustwood Motor Inn online. The listing was gone. The website, dead. She found one photo, cached from years earlier, the same flickering sign, the same dead letters spelling out RUTOD, the parking lot empty except for a single car she didn't recognize. She has never been back to that stretch of highway in Alcona County. She takes the long way now whenever she drives north. An extra 40 minutes every time, just to avoid the exit. But sometimes, when she can't sleep, when the house is too quiet and the walls settle the way old houses do, she swears she hears it again. Faint, patient, coming from somewhere just behind her. A woman crying in a room that was never supposed to be empty in the first place. The Rustwood Motor Inn doesn't exist anymore. Not on any map, not in any directory. But somewhere off that dark stretch of Michigan highway, locals still swear the sign flickers at night, still spelling out half a name, still open if you know which door to knock on. Story 2. The last roommate, the son to owner Marcus Ridley, had driven long-haul freight for 11 years, and in that time he'd learned one rule that never failed him. Never take the last room in a motel with an empty lot. He broke that rule outside Winnemucca, Nevada, on a January night so cold his rig's diesel had started to gel. The Sundowner Motor Lodge sat off Route 95 like it had been dropped there and forgotten. A horseshoe of rooms around a cracked pool nobody had filled since the Reagan administration. Only one other vehicle in the lot, an old Buick with a film of dust, so thick it looked like it hadn't moved in a season. The woman at the desk was maybe 70, wrapped in a cardigan 2 sizes too big, watching a small television with the sound off. "Just the one room left," she said before he'd even asked. 9. End unit. "I'll take it." She slid the key across without looking up. "Ice machine's out back. Don't use the phone in the room, it doesn't work anyway." Marcus didn't think much of it. Half these desert motels ran on duct tape and prayer. Room 9 was cold enough that he could see his breath. He cranked the ancient wall heater, which coughed twice and gave up. He didn't care. He'd slept in worse. He climbed into his sleeping bag on top of the motel comforter and closed his eyes. Around midnight, headlights swept across the ceiling. He sat up, checked the window. A truck, not his, a different rig, an old Peterbilt with a cracked windshield, had pulled into the space next to his. No driver got out. The cab light was on, and Marcus could see a shape behind the wheel, unmoving, facing straight ahead at the wall of room 9. He watched for 10 minutes. The shape didn't move once. Not a shift, not a breath. He could see fog the glass. Marcus grabbed his phone. No signal, not low signal, no signals. The little bar's just gone entirely, like the desert had swallowed the tower. He told himself it was a trucker sleeping off a long haul, same as him. He told himself the eerie stillness was just distance and dark playing tricks. He didn't believe it, not really. But he lay back down anyway, because what else was there to do at midnight in the middle of nowhere? At 2 a.m., someone knocked on his door. 3 times. Slow. Who is it? No answer. Just breathing, close to the wood. Like whoever it was had pressed their mouth right up against the seam of the door. Marcus grabbed the tire iron he kept by his bag out of habit and stood there, staring at the door, waiting for a second knock. It came. 3 more times. Slower. "I'll call the front desk," he said, loud, hoping it sounded like a threat instead of what it was. The breathing stopped. Footsteps, bare, from the sound of it, wrong for the cold, moved away down the walkway toward the room next to his. Room 10. Room 10 that, according to the sign out front, didn't exist. The numbers on the doors went 8, 9, 11. Marcus didn't sleep the rest of the night. He sat with his back against the headboard, tire iron across his knees, watching the strip of light under the door until the sky outside started to gray. At dawn, he packed his rig in under 4 minutes. The old woman was back at the desk, same cardigan, same silent television. "Rough night?" she asked, like she already knew the answer. "Who's in room 10? Her hand stilled on the counter. "There is no room 10. I heard someone out on the walkway. Went that direction." She looked at him for a long moment, and something in her face softened into something closer to pity. "You saw the truck too, didn't you?" Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What truck?" 18 years ago, she said. "A driver checked in right where you slept. Left his rig running all night, engine going nowhere. In the morning, the truck was empty. He was never found. We get a knock on that door maybe twice a year. Always someone who took the last room." Marcus didn't ask anything else. He paid in cash, left before she could say another word, and didn't look at the Buick in the lot as he pulled out, because in the gray morning light, he could have sworn the dust on it had shifted overnight, like something had sat behind that wheel too. He drives a different route now, adds 90 miles rather than pass anywhere near Winnemucca after dark. And every long haul since, no matter how tired, no matter how far he still has to go, Marcus Ridley has never once taken the last room in an empty lot again. Story 3. The Kian 212 Priya Anand had been a night auditor at the Blue Spruce Inn outside Missoula, Montana for 6 months. And in that time, she'd learned the graveyard shift had its own kind of silence. Thick. Total. The kind that made the hum of the ice machine sound like a scream. It was a Tuesday in November, 20 degrees outside, when the man walked in at 1:15 a.m. with no car in the lot. He was maybe 60, wearing a flannel jacket too thin for the weather, boots caked in mud that hadn't dried. He didn't shiver. "One night," he said. "Room 212 if it's free." Priya checked the system. 212 was free. Had been free for a while, actually, flagged in the notes as maintenance hold. "Do not book with no explanation attached." She almost told him it wasn't available. Instead, she found herself typing it in anyway. Something about the way he was looking at her, patient, certain, like he already knew what room he'd be sleeping in, made it easier to say yes than to argue. "ID?" she asked. He set a driver's license on the counter. Montana issued. Name, Walter Croy. Photo maybe 15 years old, going by the hair. She ran the card he offered instead, declined. He apologized, dug out cash, exact amount, like he'd counted it before he walked in. "Long walk to get here," she said, trying to make conversation, trying to shake the feeling crawling up her spine. "Not so long," he said. "I know the way." He took the key and left. Priya watched the security monitor as he crossed the lot toward the east wing, moving slow, deliberate, not once looking at the cold. At 1:52 a.m., the phone in room 212 called the front desk. She picked up. Silence on the other end. Not dead air, but a held silence, someone there and not speaking. "Room 212, is everything all right?" Breathing. Slow. Then a voice, flat and quiet. "Tell her I'm sorry." "Tell who, sir?" The line went dead. Priya's hands were shaking when she pulled up the reservation. "Room 212, guest, Walter Croy." She typed the name into the hotel's guest history, out of nothing but nerves, expecting nothing. 61 previous stays came back. All Walter Croy. All room 212, the earliest dated November 2004. She scrolled further, and near the bottom of the guest notes, a manager's entry from years ago stopped her cold. Guest reported missing by family, Nav 2004. Vehicle found off Highway 93, 8 miles from property. Body never recovered. Family confirms guest had no reason to be in Missoula. Room 212 to remain unassigned per management. DH. Priya read it 3 times. Then she looked at the check-in screen still open in front of her, the one she'd filled out 20 minutes earlier. Cash payment logged. Room 212 occupied. She called the room. No answer. She called it again. Nothing. She made herself walk the east wing corridor, flashlight in hand, though the hallway lights worked fine, because some part of her needed the extra beam of light between herself and whatever was behind that door. Room 212's door was open 3 inches, the room dark beyond it. "Mr. Croy?" No answer. She pushed the door wider, bed made untouched, bathroom empty, towels folded. No luggage, no coat, no sign that anyone had ever been inside, except the window. Unlocked, wide open, cold November air pouring into a room that should have been sealed tight against the night, and on the sill, pressed into a thin layer of frost like someone had rested their palm there, a single handprint. An adult man's hand, facing outward, like he'd been climbing toward the dark instead of away from it. Priya didn't stay for the rest of her shift. She called her manager, quit over the phone at 3 a.m., and never went back to collect her final check. The Blue Spruce Inn still operates today. Room 212 is still listed in the internal system under a note that reads exactly what it read the night Priya found it. Maintenance hold, do not book. Staff who've worked there long enough will tell you, quietly, off the clock, that every couple of years, a man in a thin flannel jacket walks in from the cold with no car in the lot, asks for that room by number and pays in exact cash. They say the newest hire always books him. They say it's easier that way. Story 4. Exit 47 Boone Castellan had been driving for the Colorado Highway Patrol for 9 years, mostly quiet stretches, mostly deer strikes, and blown tires. He hadn't taken a call about the Comet Motor Court in over a year, not since the county had condemned the place and boarded the windows, which was why the 2 a.m. call in early March didn't sit right with him. A trucker on the CB claiming lights on inside a building that hadn't had power since the county cut the line. Boone drove out to exit 47 alone because dispatch was short-staffed and the trucker's report sounded like nothing. Kids, probably, breaking in to drink where nobody would catch them. The Comet Motor Court sat back off the interstate behind a dead stretch of scrub pine, 11 units in an L shape, every window boarded except one, room 6. A faint light moved behind the plywood, yellow, unsteady, candlelight maybe, or a lantern. Boone parked, radioed his location, and approached with his flashlight low. Sheriff's Department. Anyone in there? Come on out. The light behind the boards went still. Then, slow, it moved toward the door. Boone's hand found his weapon on instinct, though he kept it holstered. I need you to come out where I can see you. The door, boarded, nailed shut from the outside 2 years earlier when the county sealed the property, opened from the inside without a sound. No splintering wood, no broken nails. It simply opened, like the boards had never been there at all. A man stood in the doorway. Thin, dressed, it was still 1994, flannel, jeans gone soft with age. A face that Boone would later describe to his sergeant as wrong around the eyes, like the light wasn't landing on him right. Long shift, officer? The man asked. Calm, almost friendly. Sir, this property's condemned. You can't be in here. I know, the man said. I've been here a while. Something about the stillness of him, the total absence of breath fogging in the freezing air, made the hair on Boone's arms stand up. I'm going to need you to step out here and show me some ID. The man smiled, and it didn't reach anywhere close to his eyes. You already have my file, officer. You just haven't found it yet. Then he stepped back into the room and the door closed. No hand on it, no wind, just closed. And the light behind the boards went out at the exact same moment. Boone radioed for backup and didn't go through that door alone. When 2 more units arrived 20 minutes later, they went in together, weapons up, flashlights sweeping a room that hadn't been touched by anyone in 2 years, by the layer of dust and the animal droppings in the corners. No man, no lantern, no sign anyone had been inside since the boards went up, except one thing. On the floor, in the dust, months of undisturbed grime, a single set of footprints leading from the door to the center of the room and stopping. No prints leading back out. Boone filed the report because he had to. His sergeant read it, said nothing for a long moment, then pulled the file from a locked cabinet in the back office. A cold case, county records. A man named Everett Doss, reported missing from room 6 of the Comet Motor Court in the autumn of 1994. No suspect, no body, no resolution. Case closed for lack of leads in 1996. The photo in the file matched the man in the doorway, down to the flannel. Boone put in for a transfer 6 weeks later, out toward Grand Junction, away from that stretch of interstate. He tells the story only when he's had a couple of drinks, and only to people he trusts not to laugh. He says the department still gets the occasional call about lights in room 6. He says nobody responds to those calls alone anymore. And he says that if you ever find yourself driving exit 47 after midnight and see a warm yellow light behind boarded windows where no light should be, you keep driving and you don't slow down to look twice, because the man in that room has been waiting a long time for someone to stop and ask him in. Story 5. The Roger Holly Vantrees had inherited the Aspen Trail Motel from her uncle the way most people inherit debt, reluctantly, and too late to say no. 14 rooms outside Jackson, Wyoming, a building older than the highway that fed it, and a paper guest register her uncle had insisted, in his will, must never be thrown away. She hadn't thought much about that clause until her first winter running the place alone. It was late February, a Thursday, when a family of 3 checked in during a snowstorm that had closed most of the pass roads behind them. A father, a mother, a boy no older than 8, exhausted, grateful for a warm room and 4 working walls. Holly logged them the old way, like her uncle always had. Ink paper register alongside the computer system corporate insisted on. Room 8. Last name Ferris. At 11 p.m., the boy came to the office alone, sock-footed in the snow, knocking soft on the glass door. Holly let him in fast, wrapped him in the blanket she kept behind the desk. "Honey, where are your parents?" "They won't wake up," he said, not crying, just flat, confused, the way kids get when something is wrong but they don't yet have the words for how wrong. Holly called 911 with one hand and ran for room 8 with the boy trailing behind her, and found both parents in bed, breathing deeply, unnaturally asleep, the kind of sleep that didn't respond to shaking, to shouting, to anything. The paramedics who arrived 20 minutes later couldn't explain it. No overdose, no carbon monoxide, nothing in their blood work that shouldn't have been there. They woke up in the ambulance 40 minutes later with no memory of falling asleep at all, only a shared, identical account. A woman had been standing at the foot of their bed since they'd checked in, watching, and neither of them had been able to move or speak or wake the other, no matter how badly they wanted to. The boy said he'd seen her too, through the crack in the bathroom door. He said she wasn't scary, not at first. She just stood there and watched his parents like she was waiting for something. He said he only got scared when she started looking at him instead. Holly didn't sleep that week. She pulled her uncle's paper register out of habit, flipping back through the years, and near the very back, tucked into the binding, she found a folded newspaper clipping that had clearly been kept on purpose. Aspen Trail Motel, 1988. A woman named Denise Okafor, 34, had died in room 8 of carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater. A heater that had, according to the article, been reported broken by 3 separate guests in the weeks before her stay and never repaired. Her husband had been out of state at the time. She'd been alone. Holly closed the register and didn't open room 8 to guests again. She had the heater system in that wing entirely replaced, had the room blessed by a pastor from town who didn't ask too many questions, and still, to this day, keeps that room off the books, permanently marked unavailable in every system corporate has ever installed. She kept the register too, because her uncle's will was specific about that, and because after that February night, Holly had come to believe her uncle had known something he'd never told her, that some rooms remember exactly how they were left, and some guests never really check out. They just wait, patient and watching, for someone to finally notice they never got to leave. Story 6. What the cameras missed. Trent Yarborough worked security for a chain of budget motels stretched along I-84 through Oregon, splitting his nights between 4 properties, mostly watching drunks stumble to the wrong rooms and teenagers try to sneak in without paying. The Sagebrush Lodge outside Baker City was his least favorite stop. Not because of trouble, the place barely had guests most nights, but because of the cameras. 6 units, 6 cameras. And for 3 weeks straight, the feed from room 3 had been glitching in the exact same way every night, right around 3:14 a.m. Static for 11 seconds, then clear again. Trent had chalked it up to old wiring until the night he actually watched it happen live. 3:14 a.m., static, right on schedule. He watched the timestamp count through the 11 seconds, same as always, waiting for the picture to snap back. At second 9, the static thinned just enough that he caught a shape, a figure standing in the center of room 3, facing the camera dead on, unmoving, in a room the booking system showed as vacant. Then the picture cleared. Room 3, empty, bed made, curtains closed exactly as they'd been at check time, nothing disturbed. Trent told himself it was a compression artifact, a trick of bad equipment and a tired brain at 3 a.m. He went and checked the room in person anyway, because the alternative, sitting there wondering, was worse than knowing. The door was locked, exactly as it should have been. He let himself in with the master key, swept his flashlight across a room that was, by every measure, completely undisturbed, except the air. Cold in a way the broken heater couldn't fully explain. And beneath the cold, something Trent could only describe later as the smell of a struck match, gone before he could be sure he'd smelled it at all. He pulled the property's incident logs going back a decade, something he had access to, but had never once bothered to read. Buried in a 2015 entry, a guest named Curtis Vale, checked into room 3, had reported to the front desk at 3 a.m. that someone was inside his locked room with him, standing at the foot of the bed. Staff had checked, found nothing. Vale checked out at first light and was found dead 9 days later, in a motel 3 states away, of what the coroner's report called an undetermined but non-suspicious cause. No further explanation given. File closed. Trent requested a transfer to a different property within the month. He didn't tell his supervisor why, just said the sagebrush wasn't a good fit. He still keeps the 11-second clip on an old hard drive, the one clean frame at second 9 saved as a still image he's never shown anyone, not even his wife. He says he doesn't need to look at it to remember what was in it. He says some nights, driving past that stretch of I-84 for other jobs, he still checks the dashboard clock without meaning to, and more often than he'd like. It reads 3:14. Story 7. The couple in 7, Renata Calloway, had waited tables at a diner outside Moab, Utah, for 4 years before her cousin talked her into managing the night shift at the Red Rock Motor Court, a 12-room stopover for hikers and off-road tourists heading into the canyons. She liked the quiet, liked the desert stars visible from the office window. She did not like the couple who checked into room 7 on a Friday in late September. They'd arrived separately, 20 minutes apart, though they'd booked as a pair. The man first, mid-30s, quiet, paid in cash, wouldn't meet her eyes. The woman after, younger, walking fast from a car parked at the very edge of the lot, glancing back at the highway like she expected someone behind her. "Just the 2 of us," the man said when Renata asked if they needed extra towels. "We won't be any trouble." Renata logged them and thought little more of it, until midnight when the woman knocked on the office door alone, breathless, no coat despite the cold. "I need you to call someone," she whispered. "Please, not the room phone, not where he can hear." "Who am I calling?" "Anyone. My sister, the police, I don't care." Her hands were shaking. "He's not who he said he was. I found things in his bag. I need to leave, and he watches the door. He always watches the door." The office phone rang before Renata could dial. Room 7. The woman went white and bolted back into the dark, toward the car at the edge of the lot, not the room. Renata answered, hand unsteady. "Front desk. Is she there?" The man's voice, flat, pleasant, unbothered. "Tell her the room's paid through morning. Tell her I'll wait." "Sir, I think you should." "Tell her," he said again, softer. "I'll wait." He hung up. Renata called the county sheriff immediately, gave every detail she had, watched the parking lot the entire 11 minutes it took a deputy to arrive. The woman's car never moved. Its headlights stayed dark, its driver's seat empty when the deputy finally checked it. No sign of her at all, not in the car, not on the highway, not anywhere the flashlights could reach. Room 7's door was unlocked when they entered. The bed hadn't been touched. The man's bag sat on the dresser, zipped, ordinary, clothes, a phone charger, nothing that explained anything the woman had said. The man himself was gone. No car of his own had ever been in the lot. He'd walked in, same as he must have walked out, into a desert that swallowed footprints within the hour. The sheriff's department ran the name he'd given at check-in and found nothing. No license, no record, no match anywhere in the system. A name that, as far as any database was concerned, belonged to no one. Renata never learned who the woman was or whether she'd made it anywhere at all. No missing persons report ever matched. No car was ever traced to that make and model parked at the edge of her lot that night. She kept the receipt from room 7 in a drawer at the front desk for a long time afterward. Cash payment, a name that didn't exist. Like proof to herself she hadn't imagined the whole thing. She still works nights. She still watches the lot when a car pulls in with 2 guests who don't quite look at each other right. And she says if a woman ever knocks on her door again, breathless, asking her to make a call, she won't hesitate the second time. She'll already be dialing before the woman finishes the sentence. Story 8. Checkout time. Desmond Okafor had worked the front desk at the Cascade View Motel outside Leavenworth, Washington, for 2 years And in that time, he developed a policy he never wrote down anywhere. He did not rent room 1 after dark. Not to anyone. Not for any price. He'd never told a guest why. He always just said it was under maintenance, offered them room 2 instead, and moved on before they could ask more questions. It worked for 2 years. It stopped working on the night Selena Marsh showed up at 11:40 p.m., soaked from a sudden mountain storm, insisting on room 1 specifically because she'd stayed there once before, years ago, and wanted the same room for reasons she didn't explain. "It's under maintenance," Desmond said, "same as always. I called ahead. Your website says it's available." She held up her phone, the booking confirmation glowing on the screen, room 1 paid in full. Desmond's stomach dropped. The website wasn't supposed to list that room at all. A glitch, maybe, from a system update the week before. He had no clean way to refuse her without sounding insane. He gave her the key. Told himself it would be fine. Told himself 2 years of caution had probably been superstition dressed up as policy. At 2 a.m., the motel's ancient landline rang through to his desk phone, a line that hadn't connected to an outside call in the 2 years he'd worked there, because corporate had cut the exterior service to save money. It rang 3 times before he picked it up, hands cold, front desk, static. Then a woman's voice, distant like it was traveling through water. "The door won't open. Someone's counting outside it. I can hear them counting." "Ma'am, I'll come right to your room." "Don't let it get to 10, she said, and her voice had gone thin, urgent, close to breaking. "It gets in the room at 10, the line cut dead. Desmond grabbed the master key and ran the length of the courtyard in the pouring rain, and as he approached room 1's door, he heard it too. A voice on the other side. Low, male, unhurried, counting. 6, 7. He pounded on the door. "Ma'am, it's the front desk, open up." 8. No answer from inside. Just the counting, closer to the door now, like whoever was speaking had pressed themselves right against the wood. 9. Desmond jammed the master key into the lock with shaking hands and shoved the door open on the count of 10, flashlight up, ready for anything. The room was empty. Bed made. No sign of Selena Marsh at all. No luggage, no coat, no evidence she'd ever checked in beyond the key card sitting neatly on the nightstand, centered, placed with deliberate care. Her car remained in the lot for 3 days before anyone came to claim it. When someone finally did, a sister, driving in from Spokane, frantic and hollow-eyed, she told Desmond that Selena had stayed at the Cascade View once before, in 2011, with a boyfriend nobody in the family had ever met and nobody could later find any record of. Selena had come home from that trip different, the sister said. Quiet, prone to checking locks 3 and 4 times. She'd never explained what happened in room 1, only that she'd sworn, for the rest of her life, that she would never go back. Until, apparently, she did. Desmond requested room 1 be permanently decommissioned. Corporate refused, citing revenue. He requested a transfer instead, and got one, and the last thing he did before leaving the Cascade View for good was find whoever had updated that booking website and ask them, point blank, how a room that had been manually blocked for 2 straight years had suddenly gone live for 1 single night. Nobody had an answer. The change simply wasn't in any log, any record, any account activity, anywhere in the system. Desmond doesn't work motels anymore. He tells the story rarely, and only ever finishes it the same way. He says some doors aren't locked to keep people out. He says some of them are locked to keep the counting in. If tonight's stories kept you looking over your shoulder, subscribe to Mr. Dead Silence for more realistic horror every week. Until next time, stay safe and sleep with the lights on. Every motel has a story. Some of them guests never check out of. Tonight, 8 true motel horror stories. The kind that make you check the lock twice,